This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream. The 2022 World Cup is being held in Qatar, which is something that's caused a lot of controversy globally. There are a number of problems here, ranging from human rights issues to climate to corruption to the deaths of migrant workers. So let's take a look at some of these controversies and see what it really means for the Qatar 2022 World Cup. The central concern about the World Cup being hosted in Qatar ultimately comes down to the human rights situation in the country. Human rights concerns in Qatar range from violence against LGBTQ+ people and women to its poor treatment of migrant workers. So let's examine those. As a country that's governed by Sharia law, acts that are considered immoral by the state are criminalized, and penalties can be very harsh indeed. For example, Article 296 of the 2003 Qatari Penal Code specifies that the punishment for anyone who instigates, induces, or seduces a female in a way to commit adultery is imprisonment of between 1 and 3 years. Additionally, anyone who makes gestures, says, or sings immoral things, or performs obscene acts in a public place can be punished with 6 months imprisonment or a 3,000 Qatari rial fine. And that's not where things end either. Historically, Qatar also specified punishments of flogging for similar crimes. And the thing is that while the penal code today specifies punishments for imprisonments and fines, it doesn't specify punishments for flogging. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. This is something the United Nations admitted in their report on torture, cruel and inhumane treatment back in 2008. While Amnesty International have found that, unfortunately, while their penal code no longer specifies this as a punishment, Article 1 of their penal code specifies that Sharia punishments are applicable if hudud crimes are committed by or to a Muslim. Now, unfortunately, the government doesn't make clear which crimes carry which punishment, such as how many lashes each particular hudud crime is punished with. And the system is particularly harsh to women, who are often the victims of cruel punishments by the Qatari government. There have even been reports of women being punished for sleeping with someone, becoming pregnant, and then being sentenced to prison as a result. And some of these women are given sentences of floggings or stonings, although often lower courts lower the sentence. Violence also exists for the LGBTQ+ community. Human Rights Watch have documented 6 cases of severe and repeated beatings, as well as dire cases of sexual harassment committed against members of the LGBTQ+ community in police custody between 2019 and 2020. 4 transgender women and a gay man spoke of how the police physically subjected detainees to physical abuse, saying that they slapped, kicked, and punched inmates until they bled. Another transgender woman said that she was beaten every day by police, lost consciousness several times during those beatings, had her hair shaved off, and her breasts photographed. Now, the Qatari government has said that these allegations were categorically and unequivocally false, and tried to reassure the global community that LGBTQ+ visitors would be safe. However, both FIFA and Qatar's commitment to this have been lackluster, to say the least. Even back in 2010, when Qatar was selected to host the tournament, FIFA president Sepp Blatter responded to a question about the political reality for gay people in the country by joking that gay football fans attending the Cup should refrain from any sexual activities. Then, just a few months ago, the Emir of Qatar stated that the gay community would be welcomed in the 2022 World Cup, provided they respect the country's culture. He confirmed that gay couples would not face arrest for holding hands in public, and that protesters would not face punishment for displaying the pride flag, provided that they are not draping it over mosques. However, considering that they have the legal ability to punish foreigners for homosexual activity and immoral protests, the government is simply asking World Cup visitors to trust them that they won't enforce these rules. And when a Qatari World Cup ambassador was interviewed by a German journalist, he had the following to say about the gay community.
But do you think gay is haram? It's haram. Because why is haram? I am not one big Muslim, but it's haram. Why? Because it's damaging the mind.
Clearly, the government may be saying one thing publicly, but their disdain for the wider community is more than evident. But one group who have specifically suffered because of the World Cup are foreign workers. Now, Qatar has a system called kafala in place, which was implemented to try and bring foreign workers to the country. The issue is that this system has been heavily criticized for its exploitative practices. That's because in essence, it requires all foreign workers to have a local sponsor. But this sponsor has an immense amount of control over the workers once they arrive, including control over their working conditions and often control over where they'll live, with sponsors often providing dorm-like accommodation to workers. Now, back in September 2020, the Qatari government promised to reform the way that the system works by getting rid of the requirement for employees to get permission from their employer to swap jobs. They also increased the minimum wage under the system, although this has still been criticized as it was only set at about £1 or $1. Even with those changes, though, the very same month, Amnesty criticized the Qatari government for continuing to fail to investigate the deaths of migrant workers. And 2 years later, it's hard to say whether these reforms have even worked. In December 2021, the Qatari government revealed that nearly 250,000 migrant workers have been able to change jobs since the reforms were implemented. But it didn't make clear how many of these workers have been able to change jobs because they gained permission from their employer, and how many had done so independently of this permission. And even if we take the Qatari government at their word and admit that they have improved the system somewhat, it doesn't negate the fact that a lot of the infrastructure for the World Cup had been built in the 12 years between Qatar being awarded the tournament in 2010 and this year, during which time huge amounts of abuse took place. All the way back in 2013, for instance, The Guardian found that companies took work ID permits from workers, making them illegal aliens in order to deny them their promised salaries. They also found that at least 44 workers died that year alone. Then in 2014, BBC journalists were arrested for trying to report on the abuse of migrant workers. And even as late as 2019, journalists from The Mirror found that some of the workers building the stadiums were being paid 750 Qatari riyals per month, which breaks down to just over $1 an hour for a typical 48-hour work week. So it's not hard to see why claims have been made that the infrastructure of the World Cup this year has been built with slave labor. So all in all, it's clear that the human rights situation in Qatar is far from ideal, which has presented some incredibly significant challenges for foreign workers who actually built the infrastructure of the tournament, and could present challenges to football fans planning to attend. Now, with the World Cup in play, it'll be interesting to see how the world reacts to this, whether they'll actually respond or whether it will just pass people by. Regardless, we'll continue to report on this over on the Daily Briefing, our show where we quickly break down the 4 stories you need to know about from around the world every single day. Now, you can watch that on the Daily Briefing YouTube channel, or you can listen by searching in your favorite podcast app. But if you want an extended version of the show, that's an extra 5 to 10 minutes every single day and an ad-free experience, then you'll need to sign up to our streaming service, Nebula. There, you'll also find other exclusive TLDR videos, which will never come to YouTube, and all of our latest videos ad-free. Now, if that has you interested, then I've got some good news, because we've partnered with CuriosityStream, the home of some of the best documentaries online. Thanks to them, you can get both streaming services, CuriosityStream for the documentaries and Nebula for the bonus TLDR, for less than $15 a year. That's a wild deal, and a 26% discount on their already low price. So get yourself a ton of documentaries and exclusive content from your favorite creators, including the Daily Briefing Extended Edition, by signing up using the link below. Thanks for your support.